Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for Level Grinders Episode 4. We have got a legendary episode for you today. I am, of course, joined by my brother, co-host, and commander of this episode, Stephen Beegle. Stephen, how you doing today?
It's going really well. Coming off of a lit summer GDQ week last week and feeling really good. Back to content creation and super excited about tonight's episode.
Oh, yeah, GDQ was a banger. Absolute delight of an event. We got to hang out for a little bit of it, which was great considering the pandemic completely derailed our plans to do so last year, but we were not thwarted this time, thankfully. And we enjoyed a great event. So I'm sure we'll be talking about that more in other games are fun content. But so yeah, just to give everyone a heads up, it's been a little bit. Level Grinders is meant to be a monthly podcast created to discuss RPGs and JRPGs. We've been a little bit on a hiatus the last few months. They've been kind of crazy, especially for me, so I haven't been able to really get things sorted out and ready to go. So it's been a bit of a gap between episodes 3 and 4. So hopefully you've had a chance to catch up on the previous 3 as we head into this one here. I am expecting my second child at the end of this month, July, so we may encounter some longer gaps between episodes again, but we hope you'll still join us for those when we do roll those out. I have selected the game for the next episode, so episode 5's game has been chosen. And of course, that'll be kind of under wraps until we're ready to do that episode, but it is ready. So hopefully with that knowledge in hand, we'll be able to roll that episode out sooner than later, just in it, maybe hopefully in a little bit more of a timely manner. So appreciate everyone's patience. I know, Stephen, the Games Are Fun Discord has been blowing us up the last week or two, just like, when's our next episode coming? So we
Yeah,
can,
it's been highly anticipated, this one.
for
Right?
sure. Yeah. So we're finally able to deliver on that. So thanks everyone for being mostly patient with us as we get this put together here. So also just some quick housekeeping. Level Grinders is a Games Are Fun production. So while this podcast will have its own feed on all of your favorite podcast platforms, news about the show will be distributed via the Games Are Fun social media accounts, and video content will air on the Games Are Fun YouTube channel. So make sure you're following Games Are Fun on social platforms and YouTube if you aren't already. We'd greatly appreciate that. So the time has come to announce. This isn't a live episode, so you've probably seen the title already. You know what this is. Our 4th episode is our first non-JRPG of the series so far. We've pretty much just stuck with JRPGs until now, with a very special edition of a game that just came out, which is the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. So this just came out recently here towards the end of May, I believe. I forget the exact date, but it's a great series. Obviously, you and we played the Mass Effect Trilogy back when it released, way back in the day. So for those that don't know or maybe haven't played them, Mass Effect is a trilogy. Well, there's also Andromeda 2, but we're focusing on the trilogy here. It was developed by BioWare. The first game, Mass Effect 1, released on November 7th, 2007. Mass Effect 2 released on January 26, 2010. And Mass Effect 3 released on March 6, 2012. Now, I know we've both played through this recently. You just played through the entire trilogy again on stream with the release of the Legendary Edition. So I'm going to kind of go over some things, all the improvements that were made. IGN has some bullet points that I found that are just going to detail that. Before I get through all that, though, do you have anything you want to say regarding maybe the original release of the trilogy, or about any of the games specific before we really drill into the Legendary Edition here?
Yeah, so these were back 360 era, and with the first one being released in 2007, this Legendary Edition release was the first time I've played them since then. So we're over a decade for the first and second, and then of course about a decade for the third one. And just because of how memorable these games were back whenever they first released, the Legendary Edition for me was pretty much a definite. And then the bullet points that we're about to get into here with the IGN article, it is I'm very glad I did with the Legendary Edition as opposed to going to Game Pass for them, because these improvements were definitely something that I was very happy to see especially getting into Mass Effect 1. It was an absolute delight with those. But yeah, like very memorable series, definitely in top 5 easy for all video games played. Just because of how really good the storytelling is, and characters, and gameplay, things along those lines. But yeah.
Yeah, we have got so much to touch base on because there's a ton to go over because we are kind of rolling 3 games into one episode here. We could probably take the time and do each game individually, but considering that the Legendary Edition came out as a whole, figure we could kind of and there's so much that goes between games that would just almost feel like a disservice to have to wait till the next time we have one of these episodes to talk about, Mass Effect 2 or Mass Effect 3. It would be really hard, I think, to not want to talk or reach into those other titles in the series, if we were just focusing on one game. So thought it might just be best to have them all present here in this episode. Since they are a continuation, unlike where we did Pokemon, where it was they're all very standalone games. These are obviously extremely tied together. There's certainly a very overarching story that goes along this trilogy. So again, just going down through a list of the major changes that were done with the Legendary Edition. That's coming from IGN, and I'm just looking at the bullet points. I'm not going to read through each one. They're pretty self-explanatory, but if you want to get a little bit deeper idea of what each of these bullet points are, you can go to IGN, and it's discussed right there. So there is a graphical overhaul, faster load times, skippable elevators, improved performance, photo mode, level scaling, all the DLCs, including weapons and armor. There's the Genesis comics, which for those that maybe played on the PS3 or Wii U when Mass Effect 3 came out, because those systems couldn't play the first 2 originally. So these Genesis comics were a way for you to make your decisions for Mass Effect 3 without actually having played those games. And it is, it kind of has that graphical representation of some of those major events. So consistent character creators, so you can have basically your same Shepard throughout the entire series. They're going to look the same regardless of what you choose, where between the previous 3 games, obviously there were graphical changes through each one where your Shepard wasn't always exactly the same necessarily between games. So this kind of just does that. Mass Effect 1 saw the most changes, the graphical improvements being the biggest one. I think that's the one where you can really see the updates in the graphics as compared to the other ones, because they were in already pretty good shape. There is still clearly a difference between them, but Mass Effect 1 obviously saw the biggest improvement for that. There were some Mako improvements, and this is the one I actually am going to read a little bit about because I know a lot of people like myself did not like the Mako. So here's what they did to make it better. It was tweaked so its gameplay sections are more enjoyable, including being less bouncy, removing the XP penalty, and adding a boost button. So, and I look forward to getting your take on that as well, because I know you actually liked the Mako before. You're one of the few, the proud Mako lovers. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on the original versus the new one. So there's also an improved HUD. There's sprinting, weapon proficiencies, some weapon handling, combat improvements, cover mechanics, inventory improvements. So those are big things. Mass Effect 2, some major changes. There's more ammo, morality fixes. So I think there were some bugs in regards to the Paragon and Renegade decisions that you can make in terms of how they affected your character. Weapon and armor DLCs are now part of the game as opposed to just being there. They've been sort of woven into it. Mass Effect 3, probably the biggest change is multiplayer was removed, which is actually kind of a bummer because Mass Effect 3's multiplayer was actually a lot of fun. There's an extended cut ending, which I know there were a lot of people not a fan of the ending in the original. And so Galactic Readiness, let me just read this one here real quick. Originally, Mass Effect 3's multiplayer mode and some external apps would affect the Galactic Readiness level, but these are no longer available. As such, it has been rebalanced to place more emphasis on Mass Effect 1 and 2. Carrying over those saves to Mass Effect 3 will benefit Galactic Readiness more than it did originally. Conversely, if you now jump straight into Mass Effect 3 without importing, You'll need to complete everything in Mass Effect 3 to have the best galactic readiness chance. So those were the big changes.
Mhm.
Were there any specifically that you noticed the most, aside from the graphical enhancements? Was there anything that really stood out between the original and the Legendary Edition?
Yeah, so the Mako was definitely heavier. Um, you don't have because the Mako felt light on his feet whenever you're traversing, especially whenever you get into some of the missions that focus on Mako use in Mass Effect One. You can kind of feel that you're gripping to the road a little bit better, and you're not, you're basically if you hit anything, you're bouncing up into the air like crazy in the first one, and this one you were much more steady in your movement, um, easier to aim in that regard as well, because since you're not jostling all over the place, you're able to aim your cannon and your guns a little bit easier. Um, in Mass Effect 1 and the Mako as well. So like just that type of thing, you could just kind of feel the weight that they added to that machine. Uh, Driving it wise, I feel like I was maybe a fan of it in the original more than this one. And I don't know
Wow.
if it was I don't know if it was because of that added weight or not, but I kind of had a rough time getting the hang of getting it moving around the way that I wanted to. And often I would, um, a lot of 3-point turns to get myself back going in the direction that I wanted to go, things like that. Um, and then I think the other thing, other than the graphical that stood out, of course, the photo mode was really nice to have with those additional graphics. There were some really nice scenes that I
Mm.
caught some great pictures for. Um, and we're talking like uh, screen saver type of or desktop background type of pictures that I was able to pick up from this game through that photo mode. It was really nice, very adjustable, and being able to do your distances and your uh, different adjustments to colors and having filters and things like that. Like it was just a really nice thing to have on there. Skippable elevators. Now I didn't utilize it a whole lot because I wanted to hear the dialogue
Hmm.
between the characters because that is one of the things. But where you're like listening to like the little newscast and you've heard it for the third time, just being able to kind of blitz through that and get going into the game again was really nice. But again, it still has those little dialogue pieces that kind of add in a little bit of character interaction. Um, and having your companions discuss things with one another and stuff. I still stuck around for those, but yeah, whenever the news feed for the third time was telling me that Horizon was attacked, I was like, okay, let me just go ahead and get out of there. And those are kind of the big things, other than in Mass Effect 3, that massive ending overhaul. And I'll get to that once we get more into the story of everything. Um, but I really will. This is what I'll say on the ending for Mass Effect 3 and the series as a whole is if you were disappointed in how Mass Effect 3 ended originally, get the Legendary Edition. It's going to change your opinion on this. It is so much more fulfilling than what it was back then. Um, and it kind of makes it all worth going through the effort that you go through in those 3 games whenever you finally see everything kind of get tied up um, in this brand new ending. It's so good. So good.
Nice. Yeah. And just to kind of go back to the photo thing mode that you mentioned, you had some really great screenshots that you took from the game and you shared in Discord. And I will say, as much as like I've always thought 2 and 3 were better Mass Effect games, I will say Mass Effect 1 is where you got your best pictures from because you were out exploring planets on the Mako and you were able to get some really incredible shots from that. So I will say photo mode really seemed to shine in Mass Effect 1 over the other 2 games. But not to say that you didn't get some great shots in the other ones, but Mass Effect 1, those when you're just out on a planet and you can see like other planets out in the distance, like it was great. So photo
It
mode was
was.
a very, very nice addition they put on that. I am surprised to hear you say that you liked original Mako better than the new one. You are a crazy man. You are a mad lad. Let me tell you what.
Listen, I love Mako Time. I don't know why there was so much hate for it
Because
because
it
Mako
sucks.
Time
It's so bad.
it doesn't though. Like it gets you onto these planets, you're able to explore things. I'm even doing it now in my Insanity playthrough. It's just hitting the Mako, cruising around on planets and stuff. Like I didn't do much of it for stream because I know that it's not a popular opinion out there about Mass Effect, but I really enjoyed just cruising planets and finding stuff and bouncing back up to find another planet to land on. It was a real joy, and I feel like in Mass Effect 2 and 3, where they added in the scanning of the planets, it stole that away from me. Like that part of things me enjoying that part of thing in Mass Effect 1 with that planetary exploration, and then just sitting in my ship and scanning a planet. Like, God, it was so boring compared to just, running into Thresher malls, and, just it had a lot of different things involved with it that was much, much more enjoyable than just your standard planet scanning in Mass Effect 2 and 3. And that's my opinion on it. Because, like, you had separate dungeons to explore, and you had the whole, a big chunk of the planet to explore and find things. So there was that exploratory sense to it all that kind of gave it more of an RPG feel to me than, say, Mass Effect 2, where it had its RPG elements, but it wasn't like a free roaming exploring type of thing as what you get from Mass Effect 1 and the Mako. That was that piece, that world exploring piece, that I think the other two are missing. That's why I enjoyed it a lot.
Gotcha. All right. Well, we've still got a ton to talk about, and one of the main things, of course, is going to be the story of the game. So, let's talk a little bit about that. So, just kind of starting with the overarching theme of the trilogy, and I'm going to let you lead this discussion here because I was living Mass Effect Legendary Edition vicariously through you, right? Because you were streaming
Right.
it. I didn't really have the time, as much as I really wanted to pick this Legendary Edition up and play through the series again. I had played through all the games originally multiple times, and I was just finding it really hard to find the time to be able to pick this game up and play through an entire trilogy. So, like I said, I was living vicariously through you through this trilogy, which was a blast, by the way. It was a lot of fun watching you play this. So I'm gonna let you really do the bulk of the explanation of the game. And obviously, spoiler warning here. We are going to be talking spoilers.
Mhm.
These games are, for the most part, over a decade old. So if you don't know the Mass Effect story by now, um, you know, but there are going to be spoilers here. So just heads up on that. So take it away.
And always remember, yeah, I was going to say, even with the spoilers being here, it's always about the journey. And this is kind of going to be a gloss over. So, like, yeah, I'm going to be hitting some
Mhm.
main plot points, but everything in between is going on still. There's a lot that happens in this game, especially if you do a lot of the side content, that you're not going to get everything, but there are going
Mhm.
to be some story beats that are going to be hit here. But yeah, to start it out, so Mass Effect 1, you create your Shepard, or you stick with one that's given to you, the default. And basically, based on the backgrounds that you choose, you'll have your own little background story to your Shepherd. And certain discussions will occur based off that background that you choose. So, in my case, I think I was a from Earth, parents died sort of situation. That classic RPG character, no parents growing up, and joined the military, and then save the day in some incredible mission. And you're being sent out on a test basically to join an elite force of kind of your special forces for the government that's running the galaxy. And you're on this first mission to be tested for this, and everybody's kind of hush hush about it. All your command and everything aren't telling you anything until you actually are about to arrive to the planet. And it turns out that the planet that you're going to is under attack. Whenever you get there, it's the classic tutorial stuff, but then you start moving up and you crest over a hill and you see where the colony is. And then at the same time, there is a gigantic, massive Cthulhu looking robot just floating around in the sky. A very intimidating scene, too. And from there, everything kind of progresses. The main antagonist is introduced at the time as well, named Saren. And Saren is basically the one who is trying to move along a trying to move along a plot established by this large Cthulhu-looking robot floating in the sky, trying to move their plot along faster so that they can achieve their goal. Um, and that's basically the first mission, kind of sets everything in place. After everything's all said and done, the object that you're there to collect is destroyed, and of course the government blames you for it, and the person who was actually the bad guy in the whole situation gets away with it. uh, Gets away with not just starting this whole thing off, but also gets away with murder. um, and then you're kind of cast into this doubtful place among the government, and they're like, maybe you're not the right choice, and yeah, we're really going to have to think about this, but why don't you just go and be human somewhere? And that one of the interesting things about this story is going to be this human alien interaction. There's this underlying space racism that flows through this story, and how characters deal with it over time is one of the actual interesting pieces to the story as well, is because there's changes in people's attitudes whenever it comes to other races in the game as the story progresses. um, so from that first mission on into about the middle of the game, you're fine, or just shy of the middle of the game, you find out, okay, this guy actually is a bad guy. Let's start pursuing, and then you begin gathering your cast of characters. And as you pull them into your party, you're completing missions for them. You're completing side missions for your chain of command in the Alliance military from Earth. You're completing missions for the Council, the government of the galaxy, um, in pursuit of Saren to try and stop him from doing whatever it is he's trying to do. Um, and that's kind of the gist of Mass Effect 1, what you're going to be up to in that one. Um, anything else I should hit on? Or is that good?
I think that's
not even really that spoilery.
No, no. There are some moments potentially that we may talk about a little bit later on in regards to that. I mean, did you want to cover the other games too? Like, just, again, sort of overarching theme as to what all is going on.
All right. So the rest of the series is in this. What's revealed to you in the first one is that the giant Cthulhu robot is of a artificial intelligence kind of master race called the Reapers. And these Reapers, basically every 50,000 years, are going to come out of hiding and wipe the galaxy clean of any sentient life that happens to exist. So once you find out this plot, that's kind of what you're standing up against for the rest of the series. And Saren is just a pawn in this entire thing. It actually comes out that he's under an immense amount of influence from these Reapers who have the ability to control minds, and basically at the end of the game regrets his decisions, leading into Mass Effect 2, where Mass Effect 2 starts off really wild, like really wild start to it. Not
Love
as
the opening
quiet
to that
and
game.
Yeah, like Mass Effect 1 start is just kind of this nice little like kind of slow flow, quiet, feet up sort of start to it. Mass Effect 2 starts off immediately with your ship being absolutely destroyed and your Shepard being quote unquote killed. So what ends up happening is a mysterious what do we call it?
Figurehead.
I want to say I don't want to say like a secret society, but maybe like a mysterious corporation finds your Shepard's body and begins a 2-year endeavor to bring you back to life, and succeeds. So you wake up on the operating table in this strange outpost that now is under attack. So you go from your ship getting completely destroyed and having to deal with that, dying, coming back to life, and then where you're coming back to life at is already under attack. So it's just this wild start to the game that just like kind of sets the tone with how the rest of Mass Effect 2 is going to be. Once everything is all cleared up and you finally are able to kind of take a breath a little bit, the situation is explained to you by Martin Sheen, who shows up as kind of the at this point he's just this kind of neutral party that is interested in stopping a race called the Collectors, because they're attacking human colonies, and he's a big fan of humans, being a human himself, doesn't want to see this happen anymore. So he kind of explains the situation, and he wants you to investigate and stop these Collectors from doing it. So your game in Mass Effect 2...
Sorry to interrupt. We should probably note here that he is the leader of an organization that people don't tend to like. They're known as Cerberus. They're shady dealing group of people, very heavily focused on the growth and survival of humankind over necessarily like other life forms. So they very highly prioritize human life over others, and they're very shady, not very likable. In fact, and just again, not to throw too much out there and step on your toes at all, but there are certain characters that were part of our team, or definitely at least one that were part of our team in Mass Effect 1, that refused to join because we are part of this Cerberus organization. But anyway, carry on.
Yep, that's right. There's some within our ranks from Mass Effect 1 that aren't happy with our dealings with Cerberus, because they are basically a terrorist organization, according to nearly every civilized and free thinking person um, within the galactic community. So they kind of have this reputation of not doing right by everybody, even whenever it comes. So they're basically just by any means necessary make humanity a better figure in the, or more of a controlling power within the galaxy. But they have the information and the technology that Shepard needs to complete the task. There's nobody else that really has the ability to do this, and he's able to work without the confines, with outside the confines of his government, of the galactic government as well. And again, helps him achieve the goals that he needs to, because he's got to go to places that are outside the jurisdiction of the Citadel space, and which is the governing section of the galaxy. So like he's got to be able to work outside of those things while also having the tools and the talent to be able to get it taken care of. And Cerberus is able to provide those things, including, you know, while some of your characters from Mass Effect 1 won't join you, some of them do. Plus, you get some additional characters that are willing to join you in your mission, because it's a big one. This is one that's potentially threatening to the entire galaxy, even though it's mainly affecting humans at this point. So, again, this is one of those ones you gather your party. Now, the really nice thing about Mass Effect 2 compared to Mass Effect 1 is that you get much more of a feeling of connection to your crew in Mass Effect 2 than what you do in 1. Mainly because what they do is they add in this mechanic to it that you need to achieve certain goals with your squad members to kind of raise their loyalty, get their mind off of things that are happening in the galaxy for them, and get their minds more on the mission. So you're taking care of these things with them, and you're getting a much bigger connection with them. And it gets to this point while you're going through it that's just kind of like, I don't want to lose any one of these people, because everybody keeps talking about the suicide mission where everybody's going to die. Well, I don't want anybody to die. I love my crew, right? So you do these things to make them more focused on the mission. So in that way, whenever you get into this supposed suicide mission to finally stop the collectors and, you know, put an end to the human colonies being attacked, and hopefully put an end to the Reapers altogether, they can do it without being distracted by anything. And you get to know them a little bit more. You get more backstory off of them. They're just and it's a real eclectic bunch. They've got some great story beats to them whenever you're getting through there. Finally, you go into the suicide mission. If you did a really good job with your crewmates and taking care of business with them, then you're basically going to run through this mission, make certain choices. As long as you make good choices, you bring your whole crew out of the final dungeon, and you all fly off while they explode, and the galaxy is safe for now. But it turns out that the collectors are just another pawn in the scheme of the Reapers. Because at the end of Mass Effect 2, Harbinger, who is kind of the main Reaper of them all, reaches out to you and says, "Yo, we're still coming. We're still coming. There's nothing you can do to stop us. Even though you stopped the collectors, we're still on our way, and we're gonna wreck your place." And Mass Effect 2. Open up Mass Effect 3. So Mass Effect 3, your ship's not blowing up or anything. You're actually under kind of a house arrest. You're Shepard. There's certain, like, how about the unofficially everybody believes you. Unofficially, everybody's like, yeah, Shepard knows what's up. The galaxy is basically on the brink of ending, and everybody knows this fact. But officially, no government is willing to, like, really back you up at the beginning. So they put you under house arrest, so you really can't talk to anybody or do any sort of interactions for a good while. And then it goes down. So maybe like 10, 15 minutes into the game, after some dialogue with some of your old squad mates and running into some old friends and stuff, the Reapers full-blown attack, like in force, land on Earth and start tearing everything to shreds. And Shepard's like, I told you so. I told you so. You know, just like what did I say? What are we gonna do? So now like everything's going to hell, and you've got to once again get off Earth and go save the galaxy. So Shepard is given his ship again, the Normandy, and Joker's the pilot again, and you start gathering up your party. Now, this time the mechanic, instead of give me 1 second here, if you want to take over a little bit, so I can rest my voice.
Sure, yeah. So yeah, they the Reapers come in and they just they haul ass for Earth, right? They basically they sort of make a beeline, right? Because humanity is kind of like their primary target this time around with this this purging or whatever they call it, or collection, or the human race seems to be the one that they are most targeting. Maybe because that's the one they're most afraid of, because that's the one they've run into Shepard twice now at this point. And I think there may be a little fear that, okay, maybe this guy is getting things done. We need to take care of him and his people first. So they haul ass, they beeline straight for Earth. Big mistake. Big mistake.
Yep.
Because
Big
all
one.
it did
So-
was just light a fire under Shepard and the entire human race, which just, we know as a very determined group of people, and ready to get things done and ready to kick some ass. And so yeah, take it away.
Yeah, so they do make the beeline, and it's because like Harbinger met Shepard twice now, face to face. Well, I say face to face, but it's more of like a hologram. But they've met twice in Mass Effect 2 and had the conversing. And my Shepard's dialogue choices were pretty much like, "You're not gonna succeed. Like, we're gonna be here to stop you." And Harbinger's like, "Oh no, we're gonna do it." So then they beeline for Earth to try and take care of humanity, but Shepard is able to get off there. Humanity sets up a resistance on Earth, and basically, what you're doing then in this, it sets up this mechanic where you're building up your galactic readiness, which we talked about in the bullet points for the games. And your galactic readiness is basically your ability to go around to different places in the galaxy and clean up their messes diplomatically, and get people shaking hands again. Um, One of the main plot, I wouldn't say it's a main plot point, but one of the main things within the story of this galaxy is this thing called the genophage. The genophage was a kind of it was a genetically modified plague. Um, Actually, it was basically a virus that rewrote the genetic code to one particular race to not be able to breed again because other races were afraid of them. One of your missions to help prepare your galactic readiness is to go and do something about that genophage, thus making certain races work together better and making one of the races really, really happy because they can start making babies again. So it's those little things where like you're kind of taking these diplomatic faux pas that the galaxy has made in the past and going through and fixing them and helping them fix them and bringing them together so that we all can basically rise up together as a galactic community and face off against the Reapers and win. So it's all kinds of different things like that that you're taking care of. It's not so much that you're connecting with your crew anymore. Now you're connecting with more of the galaxy. So it goes from Mass Effect 1 kind of being this self-driven mission to fight one person, to Mass Effect 2, where it's you and your crew put up against a massive force of bad guys. And then in Mass Effect 3, you kind of rallying the entire galaxy behind you to finally take on this Reaper threat that's taking over the entire galaxy. Because at the same time as you moving around the galaxy, the Reapers are also, and they're attacking the home planets for some of your alliance, some of your alien allies, and they're of course still attacking Earth. And there's always the threat that they'll attack the Citadel, and just all these different things. And as you're moving around through the galaxy, they're in the same system that you're moving. So if you make too many loud noises, they'll start chasing you down and they'll end your game. And just all this stuff is happening around while you're kind of gathering up the forces of the galaxy behind you to go fight them. Finally, you get your galaxy ready by doing all these particular missions, and everybody makes the move for Earth because that's where the main force of the Reapers are. So within this galactic readiness, the main piece of this puzzle to defeat the Reapers is this device, this ancient device that's been found in archives long past, that not just the the race of aliens prior to ours. So 50,000 years ago, they were working on this. And then 50,000 years before that, another race was working on it. So it's kind of this generational device that everybody over the course of these different cycles have been building towards to make work and finally end and finally put an end to the Reaper Scourge. So you're gathering resources, you're gathering people, you're gathering allies, you're fixing diplomatic faux pas, and it comes down to the end and everybody faces off on finally it all comes to a head. And I'm not going to give you any more, but that's the end of the game. So after all that business, you come down to the end of it and you finally face off and it's time to end the Reaper Scourge. And it's so well crafted. And like I said, I hit some of the main story beats, but there's so much that happens in this game that I just did it no justice.
Yeah, it's an incredibly well thought out game, and it's something that we mentioned before. Trying to think, it was on an episode of Games Are Fun, the Games Are Fun podcast. Other people have mentioned it too, but there is an entire galaxy that was created full of lore and backstory, created just for this story. This isn't based on a movie or a book or comic or anything. This is its own thing that the developers made. They created the entire backstory. There is so much to explore in these games. There's so much lore to find. There's it's so expansive, as you would want to, as you would expect in a full galaxy that you get to explore. And one of the things that I really like, and I would love to, some of the things I would love to see in either like a side story, or maybe if they do movies or TV series or whatever, if they ever decide to really fully expand on this universe a little bit more, or this galaxy a little bit more, are going back to the genophage, right? That it affects the species known as the Krogan, who were known for being able to reproduce very, very rapidly. They're a very aggressive race, and that's why people were afraid of them. But the reason this all came, like, it's very interesting the way this all came about, right? Because the other races needed the Krogan to fight off the Rachni, because the Rachni were, a spider-like race that were looking to sort of dominate everything that they touched. And the only way to really fight back against those numbers were with the numbers of the Krogan. And when it came out after the fact that the Krogan were deemed as a dangerous race and needed to be contained, the genophage was created. So I would love to see more about that. I would love to see a story around the Rachni War, before everything else happened. And of course, there was the First Contact War when humans met the what are they called?
The Turians.
The Turians, yes. So I would love to see some of that. I want to see the Quarians creating the Geth and subsequently having a war with the Geth, who are a fully cybernetic, computer-based hive mind race of machines, and the war that goes with that, because that is some of my favorite storytelling is in Mass Effect 2. One of your crewmates that you get is a Geth, and getting the story behind the Geth from one that has now become an ally. And then of course in Mass Effect 3, when you're doing your galactic readiness thing, and there's a big sort of story beat that goes along with the Geth, and trying to sort of get them on the same page as what your crewmate is, one that believes that there can be coexistence. And not only just coexistence, but you get to get behind the curtain a little bit and find out, maybe they were never really as bad as what the Quarians and everyone else thought they were. And there's just so much good stuff there. And we see a lot of it really come to a head within Mass Effect 3, but there's still the origins of those stories that I think could be told really, really well, that I would love to see. So again, just touching on the fact that there's a lot of content out there. There's a lot of lore that was created for this. Of course, there's the entirety of the Prothean race, which was there was a lot of technology left behind by the Protheans who were wiped out in the previous collection of the Reapers. So there's a lot that goes along with the Protheans. Basically, you're chasing Prothean technology and knowledge throughout the pretty much the entire trilogy, which is pretty amazing. So
because they left the Protheans are they're the previous cycle. They're 50,000 huge empire, span the entire galaxy, and your breadcrumbs kind of giving the hints as to what's coming with this Reaper cycle is stuff that they left behind for you. So like you're kind of following the breadcrumbs of this long lost civilization, who in hopes of somebody someday being able to stop this. Kind of left messages and little pieces of tech and things like that around the galaxy for you to collect up and finally learn what's actually happening, what to be worried about, and that it is a very real threat, and to be ready for when these things come. It's a lot of warnings and things like that from them. It was a really cool piece. But yeah, to go back into like exploring this world, this universe a little bit more, it is prime for it. Like I think you mentioned the genophage, I mentioned the first contact, and that Quarian piece as well. Like whenever you're talking about that, I was thinking about how like throughout this entire game and all these different interactions between all these different aliens and stuff, is you've got this like this really nice thread of racial bias that moves throughout the galaxy, and how aliens basically viewed other aliens, and the biases that they came up with based off of minor interactions really that they had. And you can see like in that Quarian backstory how whenever they were creating the Geth, that the Geth were starting to try and think. You could see that spark of AI start to happen, and them wanting to go beyond their programming, and how much fear the Quarians had whenever that happens, and how the whole thing kind of broke down whenever that first Geth was like, you know, what can I do to go outside my programming to achieve the goal, or I achieve this goal and it's not part of my programming to do, and you can kind of hear the panic in their voice, that sort of thing. There's so much there to it. Excellent point. I would love to see more content like that.
Yeah, and so to kind of move on to the next page, so we talked a lot about the story, but along with the story comes, of course, dialogue. And there's some really great dialogue that comes with it. Some of it, there's obviously some very serious tones that are present in the game because of that looming threat that we see throughout the trilogy. But within that, we also see Commander Shepard and his or her crewmates, all kind of conversing, interacting with each other. Some like each other, some despise each other. And so it's really great seeing that dialogue. And of course, the game gives you dialogue options to choose as you play through, specifically your Renegade and Paragon options, which lets you choose basically if you're going to be a good guy or, kind of a dick. They both, regardless of which one you go, they usually end up accomplishing the same thing in the end. I feel like there's not a whole lot of divergence based on what you choose, but it does give you some different dialogue options and maybe some slightly different outcomes in the end, but some really great dialogue. Were there any conversations or anything that really stick out to you as either being super touching or funny, or anything that you find very memorable? Like, what were some of those?
I think dialogue wise, the easy ones to go to are the romance. The romance ones, everybody thinks, oh, that Mass Effect is one of these first games that has a whole sex scene in it, blah blah blah, and this is the romance. But really, like the romance is actually I think the great word for it is touching. You have these touching moments where like you and whoever your romantic interest are just kind of have a tender moments, within a couple of dialogues that you get with them. So those are really good. There are funny ones, especially whenever you're dealing with any of the Krogan characters. The Krogans are, think Klingon, if you know Star Trek, like think a Klingon is basically what a Krogan is. So like they have this very like warrior caste that is kind of the higher tier within their society, and fighting and bloodshed is like their life. So you're able to get some really nice dialogues out of any of the Krogan characters. I'm trying to think. Well, I'm thinking of what maybe my favorite one was. What do you think on these dialogue pieces? Because there's some good ones.
So I gotta call out the dance, right? Because
Yeah.
you're in the club, right? You see someone dancing out on the floor, and the dialogue is, I'm gonna dance here. If you want to dance beside me and think that we're dancing together, go ahead. Like, that was just the best. That is like one of the funniest lines in the entire series.
That is a really good one. A really, really good one. Um, man, it's so tough to think back. There's so much. There's so much. My brain doesn't operate on such a detailed level like this. I
Uh,
would have to say that probably, I think the one that stands out to me the most. I'm going to go to another one, kind of more serious one though. Is the moment in Mass Effect 3 where you're talking to Legion,
mm,
your Geth crew member, and he's basically like, "Listen, in order for the Geth to have the AI sentience that they're striving for, I've got to sacrifice myself," is basically what it comes down to. And it was such a heart-wrenching decision to make, because it's like, on one hand, you've got Legion, who's probably one of the greatest characters that you'll ever interact with in the
mm-hmm.
game. But on the other hand, you have this bigger decision for the greater good to provide the Geth what they actually want, which is this full-blown sentience and understanding of things. And um I remember that was one of those moments that it was so tough to be like, the right choice. I know what the right choice is. And Legion is ready to do it. He's just waiting for me to give him permission. And it's just like, go ahead, do it. Bring him to sentience, full blown sentience, and let's get this going. And I think that was a very heart wrenching decision that had to be made, and dialogue choices that were going on, because it's a robot, so like it's not really conveying emotions through it's not an emotional conveyance. It's more of like a statement of fact from Legion that that this is what needs to be done, and I'm okay with making it happen. But it's almost like you get a feeling from Legion that he's very eager to get it finished. He wants to do this for his people, so it's like, let's help him do this. So you get that, but at the same time, there's really no emotional conveyance of that from him, that it's not something he's excited about. It's just a matter of fact, but you almost get the sense that he's excited about it, and he wants to do it, and he wants to achieve this goal for them. So really nice dialogue there.
Yeah, and there's so much more. Like you said, it's hard to pick out certain ones, and there's also so much of it that, like, there's ones that we could easily be forgetting about, that, by the time we're done here, we might be like, oh wait, like, I remember that one. It was, there's so much there. Um, but yeah, I mean, along with the story, there's DLC for each game. So we don't need to necessarily talk about each DLC, but maybe, kind of give an idea. There's one I think both of us would easily pick as the favorite.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you want to run through that one, by all means, like, do
So
so.
so in Mass Effect 3, now there's, if DLC wise, overarching of all the DLC, there's good ones, there's bad ones. There's some that are really, really useful, and they give really great story and have a great plot beat to them, and you have a lot of fun and get some gear and stuff out of it. And then there's other ones just kind of like, why did I just do this? One of them that is not useful to the plot of the game at all, but has a great plot and amazing dialogue, and is just a really good time to do, and it gives a little bit of a reprieve in this huge, serious mission that you've been undertaking over the last 3 games, is the Citadel DLC pack in Mass Effect 3, where basically it's your crew on shore leave. And oh my god, listeners, like, this, I never played it. I never played this
Same.
DLC, so I had my first experience with this, and it's a work of art. The What they have for you is, you go on shore leave. You're given a Admiral Anderson, who's an old friend from the beginning of the game. He's like, listen, you can have my house on the Citadel. It's all yours. My apartment's all yours. You get into this apartment, it's stacked. It's like, you know, best technology, great kitchen, open floor plan, big fireplace. It's got everything. Hot tubs, the works. And you're just kind of hanging out there, and of course, I forget how it starts, but basically this whole storyline unfolds that there's somebody trying to kill you. Big surprise, right? And so you and your crew are basically kind of in this almost like an Ocean's 11 sort of situation where like you're doing like secret spy stuff, but at the same time it's very comedic and over the top and James Bondy in some ways too. It's just like kind of this wild story. And it turns out the person that's trying to kill you is you, a direct clone
Dun dun
of your shepherd.
dun.
It's just like it's so over the top wild, and he's so angry because he wants to be the shepherd that saves the galaxy. The only way that he can do that is if he gets rid of you. so, so shenanigans ensue. There's little parts between each of the main portions of the Citadel DLC that you kind of do things with your crewmates, and you get into antics with them, and then you take care of the main story, and it's just this back and forth and just wild good time. And like I said, it's just kind of this little break in the middle of this grand, serious, super galaxy threatening plot line that you've been doing, that you just get to have a little bit of fun with the game. And man, is it fun. It was so good. That's where the dance quote that Adam brought up here came from. Is if I'm gonna dance here, if you want to stand next to me and act like you're dancing with me, that's cool with me. Like it was from that DLC that line
Wasn't
came
that
from.
part of? Wasn't that in Mass Effect 2?
Was it?
I'm pretty sure. I'm positive it wasn't from the Citadel DLC.
No.
Positive it wasn't from that. I think it was in Mass Effect 2 though. I'm trying to think what it was for.
Was it a mission for Arya maybe in 2? I might be wrong.
You know what? Yeah, is she the Justicar? Because it was
the Justicar was I forget what her name is. Samara or Shamara,
Samara,
something.
Yeah.
And
then what was it? Her daughter Morin.
Yeah,
you were trying to get her attention. Was the,
right? So that was Mass Effect 2. So yeah, but I guess that piece of dialogue, basically take that and make an entire story with that similar style to it. That's what you get out of the Citadel DLC. It's a joy. It is a real joy. Some real antics go down. And again, it's one of those moments where you get to know your crew members a little bit more, and they're having fun, and everybody's just having a great time. And this whole like clone coming to get you thing is going down. It's so good. It's perfect. It's a perfect DLC.
Yeah, it was awesome, and in my opinion, it was probably the best of the DLCs. I had never played it before, just like you. It was brand new to me, and it was a pleasure to watch. It was so much fun. It was, like I said, brand new, so I didn't know what to expect, and it was just a treat from start to finish. I think for me, outside of that, another good call out for DLCs would probably be, I forget what it's called, but it's in Mass Effect 2. It's essentially what bridges Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 together, is that there is a colony or an asteroid or whatever on the basically outer edge of the galaxy, which has a Mass Effect relay, which is essentially the Reaper's entry point into the rest of the galaxy. And so your task, I forget why they send you out there in the first place, but you do find out while you're there that this is the entry point for the Reapers, and the only way to buy yourself more time for the Reaper invasion is to destroy this Mass Effect relay. Now, of course, during that time, there are some shenanigans that happen, and essentially an entire colony of, was it Batarians? Is that the
Batarian
race?
colony, about 300,000 Batarians on this. I'm looking to see what it was called because I forget what it was.
Yeah. So essentially, this Batarian colony gets wiped out in the process because the human which was there, which I think was was part of Cerberus, was trying to keep that relay point open. So they're sort of trying to keep you from accomplishing your task, which also ends up preventing you from alerting the Batarians to get out of there, like get the hell out of Dodge, because this place is going up in smoke. And so you didn't really have a choice to stop that. I know that was a part that you kind of struggled with personally as you were going through, because it's like, I need to save these people, but there were story beats that like just wouldn't allow that to happen.
Yep, it was like as soon as you get to the system and you're set into the seed, you immediately know like, okay, we're destroying the mass relay, but the mass relay is going to destroy 300,000 Batarians on the planet that's going to get wiped out. Like my main thing is like, I've got to get a message out to them at least. And then they give you that moment in there too, where you think you're going to do it and you're going to be able to warn these people and somebody's going to actually be able to get off that planet, and then it's stolen from you. And you can just, it kind of sucks the momentum out of you, because like you're doing so good at that point and you're like, all right, Batarians, by the way. And then they take it and it's just like, I was never able to warn them, and it was also one of those moments where you got to go discuss things with him again. So it was like, it was a great DLC whenever it came to bridging, you know, by it, I don't want to say that it was bridging 2 and 3, but it had moments in it that was nice to have, especially since, and I mentioned this during after my playthrough too, that it felt disjointed until the very end, and then you had the end where you dealt with Reapers, and then you had this DLC that dealt with the Reapers, and finally it all kind of tied everything together again, and the storytelling for this came back. I think was it Arrival? Is that the Arrival
I
DLC?
think that's it. Yeah. Well, the reason I say it bridges the two is because this what happens here is what puts Shepard in essentially that house arrest state,
Hmm.
because he's being essentially charged with the death of this entire colony of Batarians, and that was sort of the punishment, is like, hey, you're grounded, you can't go anywhere, you can't do anything, and because it had to be investigated and all that, and like you said, people believed Shepard that he did it because it was preventing the invasion or delaying the invasion, but at the same time there were still consequences for the actions, and they had
Yep.
to sort of effectively place him on house arrest. So,
Yep.
which was
Great piece.
which was a mistake, because that delayed his time of getting that galactic readiness for the Reapers, and it just sort of delayed the entire resistance against the Reapers. So that's why I say it kind of bridges the two, because it is essentially what keeps Shepard from being able to do anything else after that event.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Good point.
um,
Good point.
but speaking of hard decisions, or wanting to make decisions and not being able to, there is a Paragon and Renegade, as we sort of talked about it, decisions that you can make that are effectively, a good, considered good, making you a good person, or a dick, like a bad person but still getting the job done. So
Hmm.
you played through as Paragon, so you were the good guy. That's how I typically always played mine, or I would say most of the time. Like I did play through the series as Renegade, just to see what the other options were like and what other choices you can make. But again, for the most part, they mostly come out to the same outcome, just done a little bit differently. What were some of the hardest decisions you had to make? Either like, because of what's going on in the situation, I really want to be Renegade right now because I'm so mad and I hate this person, or just hard to make because maybe neither Paragon or Renegade maybe made the most sense, or maybe wasn't the way you wanted to handle it. What do you think were some of the toughest choices to make?
So I think in Mass Effect 2, this really is amplified because of the different missions that you go on with your crewmates. And a lot of those different missions with your crewmates have to do with usually taking revenge in some sort of way. Um, and the one that comes to mind that kind of exemplifies this is the Solarians mission. Doctor, what's his face? Oh man,
Morden.
Morden. Yep. So Morden's mission is basically to go to Tachanka, the Krogan homeworld, and do something. Apparently, one of his students is there and under arrest or captured by the Krogan and is being forced to cure the genophage. When we get there, though, we actually find out that the student was there willingly and was working and was actually basically committing atrocities in his research. He was doing a lot of research on living Krogan, thus them dying, and ends up killing a bunch of them in his effort in a completely unethical medical practice, right? And Morden is so upset at this fact on how he's been handling the situation and what he's been doing to cure the genophage that he goes to try and shoot guy in the face. So in those particular situations, like you know that this person is completely deserving of being shot, and the renegade action is to let it happen, right? I wanted them to happen, but the way that I was RPing it is that my Commander Shepard was saving them from themselves, you know, potentially stopping them from doing something that they may regret later on down the road. So I would take the Paragon action in those courses and just be like, listen, just chill. You know, Jack was another one too, that the person that she was in, that she was going up against in her story, same sort of idea, just somebody who kind of deserved to be shot in the face. But again, it was just kind of like, let's have cooler heads prevail here. Let's not do something that you're going to regret down the road, and you know, that sort of thing. So like, as much as I wanted to let the renegade action go to this person who clearly deserves it, I more was looking out for my crew members whenever I hit that Paragon switch, because I didn't want them to have that kind of hanging on them. And of course, it's not going to matter in the grand scheme of the game, but like, that was my RP side of it, my role play side of it. It's just like what my Shepherd would do in that instance. He wouldn't really care if they died, but he would care if his crew members had some sort of adverse effect on the back end because of killing them that way, kind of executing, killing in cold blood sort of thing. But those were the hardest ones. Like, you knew that that person deserved it, but you just kind of had to stop it just because.
Yeah, you're right. And yeah, essentially all of the loyalty missions had moments like that where you're confronting someone and it's like, man, you really, like, you deserve what's about to come to you. But then it's like, okay, I need to think with a clear head here and you know, make sure everyone gets out alive, and then whoever this person is gets brought to justice or whatever, you know, a much more non-violent resolution to the conflict. And sometimes it's just like, but that's not how I want it to go.
Right. Jacob's dad is
yes,
another one.
yes, that's, yep.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. 100%.
Yep.
The other one that I was thinking of is part of one of the DLCs. I again, I can't remember what it's called, but essentially you have two brothers that are working on trying to essentially figure out the Geth. And one says, okay, well, let's get you hooked up to this machine and we'll essentially use your brain to try and hack the Geth, which goes horribly wrong. And the one brother who is not hooked up to it sees his brother in pain and refuses to help him out of that, and instead is like, well, if we just keep going, we'll get the answers we need and we can take control of the Geth and do all this or that. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. And in the end, when you finally, you know, you kind of save the day, you get the guy out of the machine. He's no longer being, his brain is no longer getting hacked by the Geth. And you confront the other guy and he's like, listen, we'll just leave him here. It's okay. We're going to get the answer we need and it'll be fine. It's like, even after all this, what you've witnessed, people died here. Your brother was in extreme amounts of pain. He could have died. And you still want to hook him back up to this thing and keep going? Are you crazy? Like, it's
so
just,
that was the Mass Effect 2 Overlord DLC.
Yeah.
And again, one that I had never done before. And yeah, this one, if you want to talk about one of the most intense stories that you'll play in a video game, this one is absolutely incredible. Remember too, the brother that got hooked up to it was neurodivergent, so had a mental disability. I think almost like the Rain Man. What's the word that I'm looking for? Oh my gosh,
I want to say Asperger's.
Like something along those lines. But neurodivergent, was completely counting on his older brother to take care of him, and again, just complete immoral action taken by him, hooks him up to this virtual intelligence to learn about the Geth, and just the amount of feels at the end of that DLC, and when you start to realize what's happening, and Adam's right, like, you want to blow this guy's head off for what he did to this person, to his own brother, and it's just like, wow, like, unbelievable stuff. It's crazy DLC.
It's very, like, heart-wrenching too, as you're playing through the mission and you're understanding what's going on here. and you know, he's calling out for help. He's in pain, and he's just like, make it stop. And like, you're trying to get to, it's like, I'm coming, dude, but you keep getting attacked by Geth, you know, along the way. And then then you're dealing with the asshole brother that's just like, hey, it's cool, we're gonna make this work, like, and it'll be worth it. And like, ugh.
He was autistic.
Autistic. Okay.
Yeah. So older brother takes advantage of his autistic young, hooks him up to this machine, and the entire, like, when you go into this mission, you're thinking that we've got a rogue AI trying to get off planet and destroy the galaxy. And you actually find out that it's not a rogue AI, it's a human literally reaching out for help, trying to get out of his situation any way that he possibly can, even if that means like jumping off planet through communication arrays. And it's just that decision at the end to not blow the older brother away is a very difficult one to make. Like, it took a lot for me to just be like, yeah, like, I gotta remain a paragon thing here. It was very tough.
Yeah.
So that one got a lot of flack. Apparently got a lot of flack.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, because of the autistic brother. I think I guess some critics of it thought that it was dehumanizing them, and because of how the whole situation went down. But I think, like, if you play through this DLC, it's actually it's terrible and tragic, but at the same time, it's very beautiful because you're realizing the humanity of this person more than I think you really can. More, just play the DLC. It's great. It's going to make you really really think hard and question being a paragon after that one.
The other the one choice you made that I found kind of surprising, you had good logic behind it, and you know, maybe you can explain that a little bit more here, was at the very end of Mass Effect 1, you do have a Reaper that's attacking the Citadel, and during sort of the moments taking place there, you have a choice where you can either save the Council, or you can save what was it, like a civilian ship with like a whole bunch of people on.
Yeah, so one of the biggest decisions that you make, one of the last big decisions that you make in Mass Effect 1, is the choice between the Destiny Ascension, which has the Citadel Council on it, and I believe it's just the Alliance fleet from Earth. And basically the choice is pitting up against, do we use our forces to back up the Destiny Ascension and save the Citadel, or do we use our extra forces to shore up the Alliance and make sure that a lot of humanity comes out of this battle okay? And I chose the Destiny Ascension. I chose to save the Citadel Council. So my reasoning behind this choice, to me, it's an easy choice, and maybe this is just kind of military mindedness mixed with this idea of greater galactic politics. I have no idea. Honestly, it felt like the easy choice because, one, the Citadel Council is kind of the seated power in the galaxy, and everybody in the Alliance who was there fighting this battle was there to protect the Citadel and the seated government in the galaxy. So their literal duty was to ensure that, you know, the Citadel Council was going to get back in place and be able to remain in power. The other thing too is whenever you lose a council like that, I was thinking like in more of a political sense, there's some destabilization that occurs, and of course that type of thing doesn't play a role in Mass Effect 2. It just, there is sort of a, you know, something does happen that, but not to the sense that the entire galactic community destabilizes and there's no government anymore if you end up letting them die. Now, it was just more, again, in this role play sense, like, the thing to me that made the logical choice to me was that the Citadel Council survive, remain in power, so in that way the galaxy doesn't destabilize, and the Alliance was there to protect them in the first place. And that's why I ended up making that choice to save the Council. Yeah, were they complete dicks in Mass Effect 2 and did not care that I made that decision? Yeah, pretty much. But I think it was important for the galaxy that they survive, is really what it comes down to. The other thing too is the Alliance doing that, me making that choice, and the Alliance sacrificing themselves to stand up for the galactic community as a whole, I think shows that they're, even more so than what everybody thought, ready to be a part of this community. And not just work and earn money next to and all that sort of stuff, but also shed blood um, to be part of this community as well. And I think that was like, that's why the choice seemed easy for me, is that all this time humanity is trying to show that they've got the gall, that they're ready to do this. That looked like an opportunity to really show that humanity was ready, was making that choice. And that's why I chose it. What'd you do? Did you save them?
So no, when I played, back in the day, I ended up choosing, the other choice, because again, I thought, okay, these people are jerks for one. But then I was also kind of taking the mindset of choosing the majority over the few. They're trying to save as many lives as possible at the expense of these few that were, yes, the seated power of this, the galactic races. But it was just kind of taking, not so much like, oh, I'm going to save these people because they're human. It was just, there are more lives. This is more lives on my hands than just these few people. So I took the larger group over the smaller. I don't know. So
your needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few type of situation.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Very Spock move. I like it.
So one of the other things, the council at the very beginning of Mass Effect 1, you are granted the status of Spectre, which is a little bit of a meme. I just want to talk about this briefly, but being a Spectre means jack shit in this game, right? Like they give you this, like
100%.
You can go wherever you want, you can do whatever you want, like outside of like total genocide, like you have essentially like diplomatic immunity wherever you go. And but none of that comes into play when you play this game. You have to earn everyone's trust, you have to earn everyone's respect. You have to do favors for people and to get whatever you want in return. It's like, does the Spectre status mean nothing to anybody?
Yeah, like, the access meme, right? Like you gain access to nothing. I don't have access to talking about. We don't have it. Like we don't have it. How many key cards do we have to find? That sort of thing, So it's just like it's title only. There's nothing. Yeah. It means nothing at all. And
meanwhile,
and the way that they treated us anyway.
Yeah, right. Meanwhile, Saren is he's just dipsy doing all over the galaxy, doing whatever going wherever he wants, and it's like, how do I get his Spectre status? Like, give me that. Yeah. Like,
right?
Because mine sucks.
He's setting up research stations to cure the genophage and build armies and trouncing around the Traverse and talking to the Geth and making all that happen. Like, he gets literally anything that he wants to. And I get he went rogue and everything, but like, even before that, he still had all the access to that. It's not like it popped up overnight as soon as we found out he was rogue. No, he was planning all this with his Spectre status and achieving his goals with literally no problems whatsoever, where we are like basically blocked at every turn. It meant nothing. Like, all right, you got your Spectre status, and this means this, that, and a big speech at the beginning whenever you get it, and they're like, make us proud, and it's just like, yeah, I'm ready to go. And then it's like, you still have all these clearances that you have to come up with to try and get into things. And how about Novaria? You go out to Novaria, and literally can go nowhere until you do all sorts of shenanigans for the bureaucracy that's on Novaria. And then finally you can go out and do what you're supposed to be doing out there. And it's just like, aren't you supposed to just be able to throw like a badge or something? Or like, did the council call you? Like, I'm supposed to be here right now. Right. Like, we're supposed to be like, no, you didn't talk. Oh, okay, well, let me go raid this office real quick. Oh, and by the way, your head honcho is corrupt. Great. Can I go now? Try to fix your corporate problems? Like,
so one of the last things I want to touch on here is, we kind of talked about a few of them earlier on, but the characters in this game. So there's a lot of characters, both crewmates and like NPCs that we encounter, that you see throughout each game. Again, some of them crewmates, some not. Some are crewmates in some games, some are like maybe not in other games, and so there's sort of this like swapping in and out. Some of them are just constant throughout. Who are some of your favorite characters?
So my absolute two that I always took everywhere, Liara and Talia. Liara and Talia are like some of the most powerful characters, so it's very easy to throw them in and be able to get a lot done. Um, and their dialogues are always really good. Tali and Liara I always romance in Mass Effect 1, and then Tali is Mass Effect 2 and 3, so like that's one reason that they always come along with me as well. Outside of those two, Legion, I'm a huge fan of Legion, and because I mean Legion was always great to have on the, and I'm also a big fan of Jack. And it's not so much that Jack is a super powerful character, but just a fun character to have around. Because her dialogue is some of the cheekiest that you can get in this game. She's just real blunt and dark humored. Um, it's funny I say it. She's a joy to have around, but really such a she's so edgy. She's the edge lord character, and she's just a great addition to the crew. So Jack was always a good one to have. And I took her along on missions and stuff, even though Liara is technically a more powerful biotic. But Jack's got uses and does a good job. But yeah, those would be my. Of course, everybody's a fan of Garrus. Garrus is
Oh
fantastic.
yeah,
He's like a
he's the
brother.
homie. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you've got the Krogans. I think I like Grunt better than I like Rex.
Same.
Grunt to
Yep.
me filled kind of that Krogan mentality, I think, like that real like and how hyped he is. Even if you choose the renegade path whenever you first meet Grunt, he's all hyped up about it. He's like, I'm so glad you shot me right now. That's so cool, like just a really you can sense that youngness because he's very new to the world, but also that same like Krogan wisdom almost, like that Klingon wisdom. Punch first, ask questions later, that sort of stuff. So it's always a delight. I think the one that I liked the least was Zaid. I think Zaid was just a punk, and
Yeah.
I didn't like him being on the crew. Didn't like talking to him. Didn't like his mission and his attitude. Absolute least favorite. I mean, I like Jacob better than him, and Jacob is so bland. And in that bland category, you've got Jacob and Mass Effect 1 Ashley and Mass Effect 1 Caden. Just so bland whenever it comes to the characters. But yeah, those are kind of my favorite, least favorite. What you got?
Yeah, I think for me, Garrus, he, like I said, he's the homie. Like it's like you guys are like the space outlaws, right? Like you two are just, I don't know. He's Starsky and Hutch basically, right? Like just the misadventures, the dialogue that you get between the two of you is again kind of tends to be a lot on the cheeky side, and like um I guess just that sort of like they have that bond, and it's like, wherever you go, Garrus is going to follow you. Like he's got your back through and through, no matter what happens. If you're starting trouble, he's going to start it with you. Yeah, he's just, I don't know. I think he's a great character. Legion is amazing. I love Legion. Just, and it's kind of like what you were saying. Everything he says is very matter of fact, but it still lends itself to some cheeky dialogue as he you have those very human emotion based dialogue versus his very logical responses and dialogue in return. Joker is always fun to chat with because I mean it's Seth Green voicing a character, and like there's always humor that goes along with anything Seth Green. Anderson is great. He's got that position of power, and he's always got your back any way that he can. Of course, he sometimes gets thwarted by things like the council and whatnot, but the way you and him kind of tag team on Udina, who's just an absolute jackass, is there's just the two of you really pile it on there, and it's a lot of fun to watch and listen to. But yeah, those are some of my favorites. Definitely a great cast of characters. There are some other DLC characters that came in with like Mass Effect 2 and stuff that just didn't really, they didn't do a whole lot. They weren't really there from start to finish, and that I will second the Jack again, just because she's so edgy and she's such a different character than you see with everyone else, because everyone else is very much in it like, hey, let's all, the greater good and all that, and Jack's just kind of like, well, I just want to burn stuff to the ground. And
Yeah.
her loyalty is with Shepard. It's not to any really particular mission at hand. So a lot of good stuff there.
Yeah, Anderson is really good, isn't he? Keith David is voice actor, and Keith David is a legend.
Yep.
And just some really great moments from Anderson, and another one of those characters that you just get a really big emotional attachment to. The scene whenever he finally punches Udina is it's just so fulfilling. Mass Effect 3's ending, because Anderson's there the whole way through, like through and through. Start of the game, middle of the game, he's kind of there just as your voice of reason to chat to whenever you don't want to talk to your crew. You've always got Anderson to go back on. Like, really good sage character, really, is what Anderson is. And absolutely amazing character. Non crew characters, because Anderson's one of them. Anderson's really good.
The two engineers in Mass Effect 2, they were fun. Down there, kind of bickering about stuff.
You have the ability to make a choice in 3 to have them again, which is really cool.
Nice.
Because they're part of Cerberus, so the whole thing goes down with Cerberus. So your Cerberus crew gets roped into, this terrible organization. And one of the things that comes across your desk in your Spectre office, you finally get an office in 3, which was awesome. It took that long, but you get to make a decision on whether or not they come back to the Normandy work for you again. And I was like, easy yes, because they were really good. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else within the DLCs or off the ship that stood out. Udina was a jackass, but again, well written and a punchable character. Like,
yeah.
I think punchable characters are kind of, brushed aside because they're punchable, but like they're written that way on purpose to make you want to punch them. And Udina is just one of those perfect punchable characters.
Yep.
And even the council, like, as much as they want to stand there as paragons and leaders of each of their respective races, they have their punchable moments, as every politician, I think, should. So it's like you just got to, everything's really nice written for a lot of these characters. I think Rex, after he leaves your party, so Rex leaves your ship in Mass Effect 2 and doesn't really return until the Citadel DLC, and then he comes back to fight with you for that Citadel DLC in Mass Effect 3. After he leaves the ship, he's a way different Rex than what he was whenever he was with you. So, like, dialogue with Rex in 2 and 3 is a lot better than what it was, but he's another great one. Unarguable, I think. A lot of people really love Rex.
Yeah. I mean, I liked Rex in the first game, but I agree that I think I liked Grunt better as like a teammate and just kind of just general, filling that void or filling that role of the Krogan throughout the rest of the series. Yeah, Grunt was the one. So, but we've talked a lot about story, dialogue, DLCs. This is an RPG show after all. So for those that maybe haven't gotten it already, the RPG elements it's a Western RPG, so it's not like your turn-based combat like you get in other games. This is a third-person shooter, but you do get some powers and things along in there. So depending on, you have classes that you can choose from, you get experience points, you level up, you allocate skill points. So there are definitely RPG elements in here, along with the roleplay aspect that you talked about, where you're making your decisions, you're choosing your sort of outcome or your path that you want to take, the way that you build your Shepard, both in physical appearance, male Shepard, female Shepard. There's all, you can create any person that you want, right? So that right there adds into a character creation, and then just the way that you build their personality over the course of those 3 games. So definitely 100% an RPG. I did mention that you get to choose your class. I when you were making yours, I'm like, man, that is such a boring decision. Um, my personal favorite class is the infiltrator because you get such a wide array of abilities that you can do. It combines biotics. It combine or no wait, I think it's soldier and what is it, engineer.
The
It
infiltrator, yep.
basically combines those. So you get like a cloaking ability, which is great. I don't remember in Mass Effect 1 if it gives you the time slow down when you're cloaked and you aim down your sight. It slows down time. You might not even have to be cloaked for it, but if you are cloaked, you do bonus damage on headshots, and you can just absolutely destroy. On top of that, you get abilities that can attack shields and barriers, so you can basically fight against any type of enemy that you come across. With it was incinerate, which was fire, which is good against like just general like health and armor. And then you had overload, which was good against shields. Maybe barrier was the only thing that you, but even that, like between your abilities and just headshotting everything in sight, especially in Mass Effect 2 when you get the Widow, just insane amounts of damage. Like you're just single shotting any enemy you come across. It's glorious. So Infiltrator was my favorite, but you played through as Soldier.
I did. And Soldier wrecks house. The biggest thing for Soldier is incendiary rounds. Incendiary rounds is the end all be all to any fight that you get into. And whenever you match that up with some of the assault rifles that are out there, like there's not much that can stand against you. As a matter of fact, for my Insanity playthrough, I'm doing the Soldier Biotic mix. Which one is that? I forget what it's called.
Is
They're
it
basically mixes
Vanguard?
Vanguard. Is it Vanguard? I think it's
I think
I
so.
think you're right. But it's Soldier Biotic mix with the ability to use assault rifles.
Mm.
So that way I can get the bonus action of incendiary rounds, but then also have my biotic actions of like warp and eventually in Mass Effect 2 will be charge is going to be a big one. So like, yes, my insanity is going a little bit differently. That's just because it's insanity and there's a little bit more strategy involved with it. But in just a full blown kind of normal playthrough, Soldier just it lays waste to everything and has access to the most weapon types. And incendiary rounds is like all of those different powers that you just mentioned kind of rolled up into one because it doesn't matter what I'm fighting, my incendiary rounds are going to take them down real fast. Um, Especially once I get my hands on that Maddock. The Maddock assault rifle, forget about it. Best gun in the game. Best gun in the game. But yeah, Soldier's really nice because it's just you're going in to play and you don't want to have to deal with a whole bunch of powers doing it. If you just want a simple run through of the story, the Soldier's there to do that because you're kind of tanky. So you're able to kind of just blow enemies away. And you can bring in your tech and biotic specialists like Tali and Liara to kind of run that side of things for you. And that's what I was doing in my playthrough. In my other one, it's a little bit different. Now I've got myself as the Vanguard along with Rex and Garrus are hanging out with me the most these days. So it's a because I'm still in one with it.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't gotten through one. I'm doing all the extras. But yeah, along with that, there's the full-blown biotic, which is basically your mage, your full-blown tech, which is just like hacker, full-blown hacker. And is there any that I'm forgetting? Because there's the soldier, which is just guns and guns, biotic, and then we had the two mixes, the Vanguard and the infiltrator. I don't think there's anything else, is there?
And maybe there's one that combines engineer and biotic.
Oh yeah.
Maybe I don't know what that's called though. I can't remember. While you look that up, just to kind of sort of wrap up our thoughts here, one of the things I kind of like to end on is just talking about speed runs and randomizers of the games that we talk about. So I don't believe there's any sort of randomizer for this game. However, we are now both very aware that speedruns exist because Mass Effect 2 was just run at SGDQ 2021, which was awesome. Great run. They beat the entire game in, what was it, about an hour and a half?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And the chargeability that I was mentioning before is like that's kind of why I'm going the build that I'm going is because they the Vanguard class to go through on the speed run, and it was ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Just bolting across all the maps and stuff like that. Plus, then also utilizing the bad build of the game back then, to just blast through the game. It was so good, so good. So Infiltrator was tech combat, Sentinel was tech biotic, Vanguard biotic combat, and then you had the Adept, Soldier, and Engineer, which are the biotic, the combat, and tech specific. But yeah, that speed run this past week on SGDQ, really, really well done.
Yeah.
Showed off some great tech and some great strats, as they say.
And of course, the most important question: can you level grind? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the short answer here is no.
The game levels you up.
Yeah.
Just by playing it. It's not really like one that you're going to go do a bunch of extra stuff to grind out more level. It's just going to happen over time as you play. And if you do extra side content, it just means that you're going to hit max level sooner.
Yeah.
That's really all that means. It's not so much a grind. So no, it's not a level grinding RPG. But it's a dang good one.
Yes, it is. Yeah. And the show's called Level Grinders, and just because you can't level grind doesn't mean it's not a great game. In fact, I want to say, I don't know. I wanted to look it up beforehand, or to try and find it. It's probably buried at this point. But I think right before the Legendary Edition came out, there's a tweet that I saw, and I mentioned this before. Maybe it was in Discord or whatever, possibly on another podcast. But they say, basically what they said was that Mass Effect 1, arguably the worst of the trilogy, is still better than 90% of the games that have come out after it. And, I can't disagree with that. I really can't. I cannot disagree. It is still better than most games. It's so well done.
And what Mass Effect 1 had against it was the gameplay, right? It was very chunky. Like, it was a very chunky gameplay. So whenever I would go back to play this after release, after getting done, you play Mass Effect 2 and 3 and it feels light and there's different motion and movement in your gameplay. And then you go back to Mass Effect 1 and it's just like you feel like you got bricks on your feet whenever you're doing this. That all changes in Legendary Edition. Like, you're lightened up and you have motion and gameplay like you do out of 2 and 3. And that was one of the best changes that they made to it, because it makes the game playable again. And I think that Mass Effect 1 story to this day is like one of the best stories out there. The way that everything develops and they kind of lay the foundation to the rest of the trilogy, it's unbeatable. It's so good. It is so good. Going on my personal top 10, probably number 1 so far, because there's nothing this year that's come out that's been able to even compete with it yet.
So after having done your replay, which game of the trilogy is your favorite? What's the best of the Mass Effect trilogy?
It's between 1 and 3.
I still, after watching you play, I still have to. Two just does it for me. Two's
really good, like, no doubt. It's one of those situations where, like, I'm gonna pick a favorite, but like all 3 of the games are really great. 2's gonna be left out of the discussion of best for me because of how throughout the entire story, like I said, it kind of disjoints itself from the rest of the full-blown plot until the very end, and then it all gets tied back up, and it's really nice, and that kind of saves the day for it. I'm going to go with 1. I'm going to lean on 1. The changes to 3's ending was really nice. Beautifully made, great gameplay. Again, plot develops really nice, great characters and stuff like that, but like 1 is very memorable for me. It's always the one that I want to go back and replay. It's always the one that I want to spend the most time on. And it's because of that mix of not just like your great plot and characters, but then that classic RPG sense of being able to explore things a little bit more deeply than what you're able to in the other ones. And it sets the tone. It really sets off a really great tone. You get to know your Shepard a little bit more and what kind of decisions you're going to make, and meet some of the cast and characters and crew. And it's that one establishes, I think, for me, as being my favorite still.
I will say that the changes that they made to it make it look more appealing to me. I still don't think I would ever think it's better than Mass Effect 2, but I think the changes they made with the Mako and HUDs and aiming, or like, just in combat in general, I think make it more appealing than it was back when it first launched. But again, for me, like, having watched you play through the majority of this trilogy, I would say that 2 is probably still my favorite. But all really great games, all definitely worth checking out. If you haven't played the Mass Effect trilogy, definitely get the Legendary Edition and play it. It's totally worth it, especially this year, right? Because there's not a ton of games out, and it's a great time to jump in and play. So,
and if you're a fan of the series beforehand, and I've heard this multiple times now, at least a handful, is my playthrough of the Legendary Edition has, old fans of the game to get the Legendary Edition because of what they saw changes wise and how the game looked and felt whenever they were watching me stream it. So, like, if you're on the fence still about Legendary Edition, and it's like, well, I've got the entire trilogy, the original releases, like, just do yourself a service, get the Legendary Edition, be over and done with it, because all the changes that they made are going to make your life so much better playing this game than what the original trilogy sitting on your shelf is going to be able to do, especially with the chunky gameplay of 1 and the bad ending of 3, because I'll call it bad now compared to the new one that we've gotten. Deeply consider it and pull the trigger. You'll be happy that you did. You will be happy that you did.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap up. This was a great episode, and again, it was nice pulling a game sort of from out of the norm, because up until now it had been like those golden age, Super Nintendo era sort of JRPG games. So it was nice pulling this one out and highlighting this game. It was very timely too, with the release of Legendary Edition and your playthrough. So it was great talking about that. So where can people find you?
So you can find me on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, and now TikTok at Lordly King S.
Awesome. And you can find me on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram at AdamPalooza85. And just want to wrap up here by saying thank you all for joining us for this episode. If you like this, please make sure to leave a review on your podcast service of choice. Follow us on social media. Subscribe to Games Are Fun on YouTube. If there's a game you'd like to see discussed on this show, reach out to us. Let us know. Games Are Fun Pod on Twitter. You can join our Discord, invite.gg/gamesarefun. We have a Level Grinders channel within that server, so you can always chat with us about the show there. Leave a comment on the YouTube video, anything like that. We'd be happy to chat with you or take ideas into consideration. But thanks again, everybody, for watching or listening, and we'll see y'all next mission.